Hi, I'm Sally Kirkman from sallykirkman.com, and I'm here today with Christina Rodenbeck from oxfordastrologer.com, and together we are Astrology Talk podcast. And today we're going to be doing one of our short little Astro Talk Investigate podcasts, and we're doing a very topical theme today. We're talking about the Olympics, which is coming up later this month. It's going to be taking place, the Summer Olympics in Paris, and it starts on the 26th of July. So we thought we'd take a look at this kind of very popular global event. I mean, it's been going on since forever. Well, okay.
We do have a start date.
We do have a start date for the first modern Olympics. And it's a chart we're going to be looking at. So 6th of April, 1896 is it's the chart of the first modern Olympics. But, I mean, the Olympics went back way before that. We're talking BC. These events very popular in Greece, the ancient Olympics, and they took place in Olympia in Greece on the Peloponnese. But we have the official chart for the start of the modern Olympics in April 1896. And we want to have a look at this chart to see what it tells us about the Olympics. And as always, we do a question. So our question this time is, what is the shadow side of the Olympics?
Yeah, so Olympic excitement is mounting, obviously, if you are into that kind of thing. What's interesting about the first modern Olympics, though, is that it was a revival to do with the sort of classical interest in classical Greece, and actually there hadn't been Olympics forever. So I think they were an ancient thing, and then they stopped having them a long time ago, thousands of years ago. So they were a part of classical Greece, sort of Plato, and people would go to look at the Olympics in Olympia. And it was the Greek islands, and it was a moment when you were supposed to come together in peace. And it was a big festival. And that's still the idea of the modern Olympics, is that we can compete with each other peacefully and gracefully, without, it's like peace instead of war, right? It's a different way of battling things out. So you battle things out on the sports field instead of on the battlefield, or a way of channeling that some aggressive Aries energy into a less lethal forum. So it's interesting that actually the first Olympics have the sun in Aries.
Yes, classic, isn't it? Aries, ruled by Mars.
Which is the sign of battle.
Sign of battle, and Mars is we know Mars is god of war, but Mars is a symbol of planet doesn't mean just one thing. And Mars is about physical fitness. It's about competition as well. So, it's really timely, I think, to have this first Olympics starting when the sun was in Aries. And not only that, but its ruling planet, the chart is Virgo ascendant. So the ruling planet is Mercury, quick, speedy Mercury, actually, also in Aries. So there's this strong Aries signature in the chart, which is perfect. And that theme continues, doesn't it? I mean, these are, the Olympians, the Olympians, they're sort of champions of their sport. They're very often at their peak of physical fitness. I mean, you need to be darn good at what you do to get into the team, don't you? So, I mean, we're talking, it's kind of the elite athletes very much.
So Mars in the original chart, in the first modern Olympics chart, this one from 1896, when it's also a period in the 1890s when people are becoming very interested in the physical body, right? So people are starting to go cycling, they're swimming, they're rowing. These people are. The idea of being a fit person is coming into the collective consciousness, because before that it wasn't such a thing, right? So Mars is in Aquarius, the sign of the people. It's also in the sixth house, which is connected to the body, and Virgo is rising, which is also a sign that's connected to the body. So it's all about bodies. And I have to say that one of the there is a fascist aesthetic around the Olympics that may not be talked about much, but if you've seen Leni Riefenstahl's movie Olympiad, then you know what I mean. All about the beautiful body, etc., which was very kind of in the zeitgeist from the 1890s onwards into the 1920s. You know, all of these ideas of going wandering in the Tyrolean hills and naked swimming, etc. That was very in fashion. And it was part of this, of that aesthetic. And I still think that carries on, this slightly kind of Nazi aesthetic. That's maybe too extreme, but this aesthetic about the body beautiful at the Olympics. And I'm talking about this because we're talking about what is the shadow side of the Olympics. So the good side is healthy competition, right? That's what we want it to be, healthy competition. But there's a whole dark side of the Olympics, and it's interesting that this sun in Aries, which is exalted in Aries, that's the sun's, it's a place of exaltation for the sun, is in the 8th house of secrets, isn't it? Sex, secrets, hidden things, hidden money. So part of the shadow side of the Olympics so it comes from a place of shadow, doesn't it? It really interesting.
It does. I mean, just, there's different themes we can kind of talk about with this shadow. I mean, one is, just the colossal amount of money that it costs to put on the Olympics. I mean, it's extraordinary. We're talking billions. I think it was one of the Winter Olympics that cost the most. It was like 55 billion. And, very famously, Brazil, when it was in Rio, not too long ago, I mean, they made a loss of 2 billion putting this on. So, there's straight away, there's, I mean, some countries must go, oh my Lord, we've got the Olympics. Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no. It's in the house of debt, actually.
Yeah.
Basically, that sun in Aries is in that 8th house of debt. And it's interesting to me that the Mercury, which is the chart ruler, also is in the 8th house, which is also about youth, so there's a whole side to the Olympics, which is that you can't really be Olympian when you're very old, unless I think some of the riders can reach you get some who are pretty old, but essentially this is a young person's thing. It's about youth. It's about, and that's Mercury. Mercury is about youth, and almost about children. And one of the other parts of the shadow sides of the Olympics is, I would say, the abuse of children. Famously, the gymnasts. The gymnasts who are plucked as very small children. I mean, we all think of maybe not, I don't think Nadia Comaneci was, but those very young Soviet girls who were plucked, who were given drugs, and worked really hard to do what? To bounce around on a mat. And then what? To become, so there's this exploitation of young people as well that I think is part of the Olympics.
Yeah. And for me, the really interesting signature in this chart is this was the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, which only happens once, every, I think it's almost 500 years, you only get a Neptune-Pluto conjunction. And those two planets, Neptune and Pluto, are in Gemini in the 10th house. And I think this is really important for the theme of the Olympics, because Neptune is the planet that's to do with drugs. And Pluto's Pluto, you're going to see a planet that's about the shadow side of things. What's hidden? It's Pluto. And they're together in Gemini. And Gemini is such, that Gemini-Sagittarius axis, Gemini's languages, Sagittarius is global. So it is this axis of bringing different languages, different peoples together. So to have this conjunction in Gemini in the top of the chart, straight away, for me, it's kind of saying, okay.
It's saying, uh-oh. Oops.
Yeah. It's really it's almost quite a sinister signature, isn't it, to have that conjunction there?
I think it's sinister. And Gemini is also really quite a sporty side. It's good for competition, one-on-one competitions like tennis players and people like that. Yeah, I think it's completely sinister. The highest planet in this chart is Pluto, right? So we're talking about big, big money when you have Pluto involved, and possibly crime, and power. So it's about, and the other thing about the Olympics is that it's incredibly political, right? It's supposed to be all about peace. No, there's always boycotts. There's always this, there's always that. And countries really want to win Olympic medals to prove that they're powerful. They've poured money into bringing on these Olympians, right? During the Soviet era, the Soviets poured money into their teams, and they still do now. Remember the East German swimming team? And this was, and pumped them full of drugs in particular. So I think that you're right. I think that the Pluto being the most highly placed planet in the chart, plus everything, so much stuff, energy in the 8th house, is quite a sinister chart. So what you see is not what you get with the Olympics. That's all the machinery behind it. It has a shady side. I wonder how long the drugs thing has been going on. We assume it's like, late 20th century, etc. But, who knows how much cocaine they were sniffing in 1925 to rocket down the track. You can't sort of make assumptions about what was allowed and what was not allowed. So it's this exercise it's this display of power by different nations, right? So also who's holding the Olympics and the whole kind of the Olympic flame, all the ceremonies, that's very Neptunian, isn't it? Let's have the lovely ceremony of people sort of flying around. Do you remember the Chinese one a few years ago? That was incredible.
They're real spectacles, aren't they? They are real spectacles, the ceremonies. Quite extraordinary. I mean, I just also want to say that, we're talking about really the sort of shadowy, sinister side of this chart. I love the Olympics. I was brought up watching them. My parents, watched a lot of sport, and I do love them. And what I do like about this chart is the moon in Aquarius, which is, it's classic, the moon in Aquarius, that it's the people, it's the people, and there is a sense of equality there, opposite a lovely Jupiter in Cancer, very protective, generous, goodwill. And also there is this shadow side of the Olympics, but you do get lots of lovely stories of athletes helping one another out and kind of supporting one another. And I think that shows also from the moon Jupiter too. So a lot of people go into the Olympics with good heart, good faith as well.
Oh yeah, that's the athletes though, isn't it? For the most part, it's the people running the show that are the shadow, right?
Yes.
So you want to make a division, but you're not saying all the athletes are shadowy at all. That's not the point. And in fact, the Venus is in Pisces in this chart, which is lovely. Venus is exalted in Pisces in the 7th house. So it is about partnership and it is about peace, So despite the shadowy stuff, it's like, what's stronger, the shadow stuff or the Venus in Pisces to me? And that moon in Aquarius. Although I think again, and I think also, so there's Venus in Pisces in the 7th, and Venus is making a conjunction to Juno, the asteroid Juno, at 29 degrees of Pisces. So it's like, and Juno is often about excellence. It's about being really, really good at stuff. And that's where I'm seeing these athletes. It's like they're coming in peace. They're really, really excellent at whatever they're doing. And it makes a beautiful trine aspect to Jupiter in the 11th house, which is the house of teams, right? So you're part of an Olympic team when you go. You're not just doing the 100 meters. You're part of the Olympic team. And then there's always stuff around the Olympic Village. But I think we need to focus on the shadow side because that is the question. What is the shadow side of the Olympics? Let's look at the summer chart for this year, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's 26th of July. The opening ceremony is 7:30 p.m. in Paris, France. Sun in Leo. So we near enough always get the Olympics now during this time, don't we? The Summer Olympics. When the sun is shining bright in Leo, there's a big party and celebration going on as well. Although the sun is quite interesting in this chart because it's opposite Pluto and it's in a very close connection, sextile aspect to Mars in Gemini. So, I mean, that shows kind of the Sun-Mars sextile, shows the sort of sporty, here we go, we've got this sporty festival that's taking place, this big major sporting event that's taking place, bringing people together. But that Pluto, again, adds a little shadow, doesn't it? There's a shadow quality to it.
I think there's a lot, again, this time. I have to say, just as an aside, oh my God, what's happening in France? But, which is also extraordinary, what's happening in France, and the Olympics are coming. That Pluto is at 0 degrees, back at 0 degrees of Aquarius this summer. It makes an exact square to the midheaven of this chart, which is 1 degree of Scorpio, ruled by Pluto again. So there's a Plutonian feeling about this. This Pluto's in the first house. Sagittarius, of course, is one of the very sporty signs again. So Sagittarius rising, 29 degrees. That's really nice. I'm interested that Neptune has arrived at 29 degrees of Pisces, right? So it's back on the Venus-Juno conjunction of the original chart. What is Neptune? Neptune is glamour, glitz, drugs. Again, I think there may well be a big drug scandal, or we may not even know about it. It might be a hidden thing, but it's obviously a huge, huge issue now. So there's that. Do you think the French are going to get in debt with this? Do you think they're going to have fun?
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are planets in the eighth house again. Mercury's there in Virgo, Venus in Leo. And if they do, it may not be talked about. That's what I want to say. It may not be something they want to sort of advertise. I mean, that Mercury at 0 Virgo is in a very tight quincunx aspect with Pluto. It's almost like let's keep the money out of this. Let's not talk about the money. Money is a big feature again. It always is. It always is. I mean, it's a huge event.
It's also who's paying for what. There was the Olympics in Atlanta a few years ago, where they just sold so much advertising. It was like the Coca-Cola Olympics in the end, and it was just not good. Right? It didn't have that. It felt like it had been bought. And I wonder, I don't think that's going to happen this time, actually. I think quite the opposite. I don't think it's going to feel like it's been bought. I also noticed, and I think this is really cool, that Mars is in Gemini, which, as we said, is a really kind of sporty sign. It's really good for sports. And that Mars is at 4 degrees of Gemini on the opening of the Olympics, right at the top of the original chart. So it's gonna be fire. People are already worried about, fire in two senses. One as in, yay, it's going to be fire. And two as in, it's going to be hot, right? I have balloons going up.
You have this every time, Christina.
I think it's when I gesture too much. It's going to be a hot Olympics. And they're already talking about how they're worried about that. With Mars on the midheaven, of course it's going to be hot. And also, the other planet on the midheaven is Uranus, on the midheaven of the first modern Olympics by transit, if you see what I mean. And that also suggests something is going to be different about these Olympics.
Interesting. I mean, I did notice that the ruling planet of the Paris Olympics is Jupiter at 13 Gemini. There's a lot of synastry between this chart and the original
Absolutely.
chart. So the Jupiter at 13 Gemini sits on the Neptune-Pluto conjunction. I mean, it sits right between it. So I think these themes we're talking about in the chart of the first Olympics, they're going to be there. And we know they are as well. I mean, there's already Russia are not going to be able to compete There's these boycotts and bans going on. There's going to be protests. Russia have to compete as neutral individuals. They're not involved in the opening ceremony. There's already talk about, protests around not wanting Israel to compete because of the wars we've got going on. So, we're right in the eye of making, the Paris Olympics are going to be, they're political too.
It's always political.
Yeah, they are.
And yeah, you're right. I think that's going to be very political, and who wields the power. I think there's going to be stuff around drugs. I think there's going to be stuff around money. So it's exciting. And it's exciting if you're interested in the shadow. How is the shadow going to manifest? And watching the Olympics, yay, going to be really interesting. But watch for that too. I'm also thinking of it was at the 1936 Olympics where Jesse Owens won, and then this is the Munich Olympics, right? So you have this incredible movie made by Leni Riefenstahl, which it's an amazing watch, and you have Jesse Owens, an African American, winning, which went down like a cup of cold sick with Hitler. But turn things upside down. And that is the beauty of the Olympics, is when something like that happens, is that you cannot stop excellence coming forward. Not every time and not in every sport, because there's cheating and everything. But sometimes you have this miracle and this beautiful thing happens that is just like, human beings are great. And that's that Aquarian side of the original chart, is the wonderfulness of humankind.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Can't wait.
So I hope we've answered that question for you, everybody. What's the shadow side of the Olympics? And yeah, do watch it. And listen in to us too. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.